Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Safari Pedal Show. I'm your host, Abby. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Crazy Wild Safari Podcast Zoo thing bandwagon. It's great to have y'all here. I am so excited for today's episode because, before I even talk about the topic and all that good stuff, today we are having our first returning guest on the podcast who is not Noam, the very awesome founder of Safari Pedals, who has been here a few times in the podcast Safari world, but I'm very, very excited to be having Carl Bahner back on the show. He is an awesome mix engineer, educator, and he's also the co-host of the Secret Sonics podcast that I absolutely love. We're going to be diving into his journey and approach as to how one should communicate what they do on social media, creating content that's relevant for having the right clients find you, and kind of just unlocking the awareness of what is it that I do? What are the people that I'm trying to attract? What are the clients I'm trying to attract? What music do I like working on? And all these nuances and things that go under the umbrella of personal branding. And I feel like there's not much more I can add to this intro. So without further ado, let's cut to the chase, as they say. Yay! Please give a very warm Safari welcome to our first returning guest, who's not Noam, Carl Bahner. Welcome back to the show.
Are you sure that I'm not Noam?
It could be.
I'm just saying, like, you don't know. AI technology has gotten pretty convincing. This could be like a Snapchat filter.
That's so true. It could be Beyonce also.
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking maybe like an undercover boss kind of situation where like you know what I mean? Like, I want to see how you are with other guests. You know?
You can see how mean I am behind the scenes, off the clock.
So for those listening, you can already get a vibe for how weird this episode's going to be.
Yes. Title of the episode, Abby from Safari Pedals gets exposed. Abby exposed. Wonderful.
Oh gosh. But in all seriousness, no, I'm very, very excited to be here. I appreciate you wanting me back and inviting me back and letting me get a chance to hang out with you a little bit some more.
Oh, dude.
That was a weird, my brain just stopped working mid-sentence. You know what I meant.
Yes. Absolutely. And I'm really pumped to have you back on the show. I really appreciate your time. So there may be folks who missed the previous episode that we did together. So highly recommend y'all check it out if you haven't yet. So let's start with who you are, what you do for whoever doesn't know yet, and we'll take it from there.
Okay. Well, I am Carl Bahner. I am a mix engineer and educator from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour or so west of Philadelphia, middle of rural Amish country. It's a weird place to be, but a really great place to be fully remote like I am. So it works out pretty well. So I have been in the music industry for 19 years, doing everything from teaching, and I was a session drummer, touring drummer, producer, mix engineer, all sorts of things. And when I look back at it, it all kind of makes sense how it led me to doing what I'm doing now. But also, I feel like with anybody's long career path, it always seems completely nonsensical and random until you have a chance to look back at it. And I think all the things that I've done led me to really focusing on mixing, and specifically mixing and doing additional production for other artists, where I'm kind of coming in when the production's at the 98% mark before mixing. I just love being in that position, and also teaching other producers and engineers how to make better connections with potential clients, getting better clients, not just getting more clients, but getting more of the right kind of clients. So that's kind of where I'm at.
That's awesome. And I'd love if we could dive, we had chatted about it a little bit before. I'd love to dive right into your whole philosophy, like you said, getting the right clients, that personal branding, the things that you talk about on your social media. I'd love to kick off and ask, like, how did you get to kind of educating people? Like, what got you there?
I'm going to go back to 2019. In 2019, I was already like 50%-ish remote. And when COVID hit, everybody went remote, right? But at that point, I already had all of the kinks worked out, and 2020 ended up being my best year professionally, like ever. Even though I'd already been full time for over a decade, it was just like it exploded. That was when I started trying to figure out why. Like, why was I having a really good year in 2020? Why was I having a really great year in 2021? When the majority of the industry were not having the kind of, good luck and successes that I was finding. And I knew that it wasn't because I was a better mix engineer than everybody else, because that's obviously not true. And I spent a lot of time self-reflecting, having conversations with my peers, and just trying to figure out, well, what was it that made it so different for my situation than for other people who, objectively have had more success than me, objectively had, were they were in better positions to make it work than me, but yet for some reason I could make it work. And I knew it wasn't just a fluke because it continued, but I just didn't know what it was. And after a lot of reflection and conversations, I started to realize that it was the way that I present myself online, and specifically how intentionally I really try to be about making sure that I'm really focusing on the things that make me me, and not being afraid of the quirks, trying to really understand who I want to work with, what those clients are like, and what they appreciate and what they find endearing about the now bearded, bald-headed dork that they want on their team. And they're trying to figure out what it is that is going to connect the quirks about me and the people that find those quirks really interesting and beneficial for their music. It didn't start out with me intending to teach people about it. It happened naturally because I've been an educator since 2005 anyway. So like that, the teaching part is just, that's what I do. Like, me trying to share knowledge and helping to contextualize concepts to people so I can help them with whatever they're doing. Like, that's just part of my DNA. When I was having these kind of observations about myself and about how other people were doing things and what was working and what wasn't, I was just having conversations with my friends and kind of helping them to make tweaks to their social media, like the way that they do outreach, to be able to just find some better success for them. And it was purely just me helping friends, just giving them advice. And one day I was talking with one of my students. We went out to just like grab a drink and catch up, because it was like after stuff had been opened up again. We were talking about it and I was giving him some advice on what he should do. And he stopped me after like 45 minutes into this conversation. And he's like, "Can I just hire you to coach me?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" Because I hadn't ever really had a business coach before and that. And he was saying, he was in a program for, I don't know, I think it was like 6 or 7 months at that point. And he was like, "I feel like I learned more in the past hour than I did in 6 months of coaching with this other person." And I thought to myself, okay, well, that's cool, but I have no idea what that even really means logistically, because all of my teaching has been one-on-one or master classes, or I taught a high school indoor drum line for a year, so I didn't really know what this meant. And I never really pictured myself as a business coach, because I am not the finance guy. I'm not the Facebook, ads manager, super techie nerd that understands all of that stuff. Like, I just really know how to connect with people. It started getting me to think about finding ways to express the stuff that I've noticed, the stuff that I've experimented with, and realizing that a lot of the personal branding things that I teach, they're things that I was doing as a session drummer and as a touring drummer before, because I grew up, I musically, grew up in Philly, so it wasn't a major music city. So being a session drummer in a small city there's not a lot of work. So you really have to be, hustling and like meeting a lot of people, trying to not just meet them, but like get them to love you and get them to want to pull you in on the project. I had unknowingly or unintentionally been developing all of these personal branding skills throughout my entire career in all these different ways that I was doing it without knowing what personal branding was, without ever thinking about it as branding.
Based off of everything that you've observed and trying to poke holes in your own philosophy, are there kind of, you can say, common pitfalls you see among producers and engineers when it comes to personal branding? And do you have like a broad approach as to how to start remedying these pitfalls?
The broad approach to remedying them, it all comes down to taking the time to really question yourself about how do you want people to feel about you? What is it about you that makes you unique? The good and the bad. Taking the time to really figure out who it is that you want to help, who it is that's going to find the most value in what it is that you do. So I'm starting with like the remedy first, and then I'll talk about like some of the specific pitfalls. But I know two come to mind right away. And this is, I guess, this is more of a content pitfall, more so than a branding specific pitfall, but they're so intertwined that it's relevant. Two big traps I see a lot. I call them the peer trap and the beginner trap. And that is the peer trap is when somebody who wants to use social media to be able to get more mixing clients. I'm just going to use myself as an example, right? Where I'm using social media with the hopes of convincing artists to hire me to mix them. And the kind of content that I would create to do that are mix tutorials and EQ tips and like lead magnets that are like, oh, here's 10 free plugins that you should download, whatever it is. And what's happening is if I were to do that, I'm unintentionally making stuff that is really valuable and interesting and solving problems for my peers, not solving problems for the artist who I'm trying to get to hire me. And I think a lot of people will do that and kind of tell themselves that they're trying to showcase that they're trying to show off their skill. They're trying to show them that they can do these things. Big observation that I've had is that most artists are a lot less concerned about what skills you have than they are about whether or not you actually give a shit, and if you understand their vision, or that you really want to understand their vision and you're driven to understanding their vision. That is, in practice, so much more important than what specific skills do you have. Like, oh, cool, you know how compressors work. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's not something that an artist is like trying to check off their mental list before they hire somebody. And then the other one, actually, I'm going to go back and say the way that ties into the personal branding is that you unintentionally become a content creator, or you unintentionally become like the mixing tips guy or girl. Like you become known for that thing, and people see you as the person that makes tips on YouTube. If that's your goal, then yeah, do that. If you want to be an educator and you want to, make courses teaching people, and you want to like have private students, and that is the goal, then yeah, that is the right thing to do. But if you're trying to convince artists to trust you with their musical baby, showing off your EQ tricks is not going to be the thing that convinces them. It's not going to be the thing that convinces artists that are good and have their priorities in the right place. The other one is what I call the beginner trap, which you can probably guess where I'm going to go with that. It's where people are making content to help, to like try to be helpful and try to like make stuff that artists are going to find value in and appreciate, which is at least like a step in the right direction. But they make things like, oh, here's a free download on how to set up your first home studio on a budget, or here's a guide to uploading your songs to DistroKid, or whatever it is. And they're unintentionally making stuff that is so broad and so basic to help as many people as they can, which is what they're thinking. But in reality, it's helping total beginners, which is not a bad thing. Again, if your goal is to help beginners.
After you sat and reflected on what you as a mix engineer want to attract in clients, how over time did you kind of crack the code on what kind of content to make? Like, what was that journey like for you? I look at it like a Venn diagram, and I call these the 3 niche circles. When most people think of, well, what's your niche? They usually
kind of associate that with genre. This first circle, I call it the style niche. It's a little bit different than genre. And I think when most people think of what kind of music they make, they think in genres, and they say, well, rock and metal. But it's 2024, and everybody listens to everything, right? Like if you ask any producer or engineer, like what kind of music do they listen to? They listen to everything. Trying to describe our ideal clients based on what genre of music they make is kind of a fool's errand, because it's too broad. One of the first things that I did in this journey, so I am kind of starting at the end and the beginning at the same time, I guess, but whatever. I stopped looking at it like a genre niche and started looking at it as a style niche. And the difference being, the style niche are artists that make music that has underlying characteristics that may not be genre specific, but do really make me feel passionate and excited when I'm working on it. So the examples that I use for myself as a mixing engineer, I love big, generally speaking, I love big, articulate, catchy vocals, massive rhythm sections, and tons of little nerdy nuances and textures that nobody notices till the 10th time they've heard the song. A lot of pop has those things. A lot of pop doesn't. A lot of rock has those. A lot of rock doesn't. A lot of hip hop does. A lot of hip hop doesn't. A lot of metal does. A lot of metal doesn't. A lot of country does. It's less about the genre, and it's more about what are those kind of underlying characteristics. The beautiful thing about that is that, artists don't describe themselves by genre typically either. It's not like artists it's very, very, very rare that an artist self-identifies their music by a specific genre. I think pop punk might be one of the only ones, because there's the whole revival. That's a whole thing. I don't want to open that can of worms. But generally speaking, you ask an artist, what kind of music do they make? What's their, what genre is it? They'll probably say, and then give you 5 different genres and hyphenate all of them, right? So artists don't think of it based on a specific genre, but if we say, oh, I really thrive on music with, big catchy vocals, massive rhythm sections, and a lot of little textures, some people are going to hear that and be like, oh my God, that's exactly what I want. And some people are not. And that's okay, because I'm filtering out the people that don't find the same kind of values in it that I do. And the people that do read that are going to be all in on wanting to know everything about me and want to talk to me, because we share eye to eye. And it's not, I am a pop punk producer, I'm a indie rock producer. It's not about the genre. It's about what makes us love the music that we love.
Dude, my brain right now is kind of I don't know if you guys can see on camera, I'm having some major mind-blowing, gear-turning things happening right now. I can't even begin to tell you how much, everything you just said really opened my eyes. And I feel like you just unlocked an awareness when it comes to, what do I like? How would I describe my style or the style that I like? And when the way that you laid it out, it's how could I miss that? That makes so much sense when it comes to finding people that suit what your style is. So I'm kind of okay, wait, how are we going to take that and apply these things? And I'm just wow, lots of things happening right now in here.
Good. Well, are you ready for your brain to melt some more?
Yes, please.
That's only one of the 3 circles.
Oh, dang, guys, we're only on circle 1. Circle 2, okay. Let's go. Heck yeah.
Circle 2. I used to refer to it as the service niche, which is, well, what are they hiring me to do? What are the services that I want to provide that they need? But what I figured out, and this is a more recent eureka moment, I guess, for me, is that since I'm always trying to make everything about bridging the gap between myself and what makes me me and my unique tastes, experiences, and perspectives of what shapes how I make the music that I make, bridging that and the people that I think are going to find the most value in what I do, I was like, well, I don't want to talk about the service because they don't care about the service. They care about the problems that they have. And I started rethinking it as like, rather than this is the service that I provide, it's like these are the problems that I solve.
Ooh.
So I could say, I do mixing and additional production. Like that's like if I were to talk to another producer, about like what I focus on, I would say, yeah, I do a lot of like mixing and additional production, where the producer, whether it's a self-produced artist or a producer working with an artist, they'll come to me when the production is 97% ready for mixing, but there's still a couple things that they were banging their head against the wall trying to make a decision on or figure out, whether that's like a transition or is the bridge too busy, like those things, switching out drum samples if the snare drum is kind of wimpy. That's how I would describe it to other producers. But ultimately, that's not how an artist would think about it. An artist isn't saying, oh, I want someone to do mixing and additional production. Like that's not really how they think. They think, oh, well, I feel like there's something missing and I don't know what it is. I feel like there's the production seems to be done, but it's still not quite there. And it's not just a mixing thing. It's not just balance and, EQ and whatever. Like there's something kind of fundamentally off about the song and I can't figure out what it is. And neither can the producer. And I want someone that's not only going to make the mix sound like $1 trillion, but also is going to be able to listen as a producer, has the experience as a producer to help kind of like identify those little things and fix it. How to like, fill in those little gaps that we maybe lost objectivity about and don't know if it's better or just different. So that's how I started looking at it. It's like, well, what is the problem that I solve for these people? And for me, it's the objectivity, quality control, the extra set of of ideas to bounce off of how to make the song get closer to the vision that the artist has. I'm good at like bouncing off ideas that surprises them and just makes them think about the song or a section or a note in a different way than they have before. That makes it a lot easier for me to be able to try to communicate these things to artists or other producers than if I were to just say, I do mixing and additional production. Because it means something, but like it doesn't really mean anything. And an artist, unless the artists themselves are also a producer, they might not know what any of that means.
Circle 3, let's do it.
Circle 3 is a lot less brain melty, but I think it's the most important one for me. It's the personality niche. It's what are they like as people? How do they communicate? Do they respect your boundaries? How do they look at collaboration? What do they appreciate about you? Right? How much joy do you get from working with them? If you're a dick, I just don't want to work with you. Like I don't care how good the money is. Like I don't have time for that. I don't have the energy for that. I have 2 kids. Like they're sassy and obnoxious enough at home. Like I don't need to add that at work too. Like I'm 39. I'm not planning on retiring anytime soon, obviously. Not in this economy. No, but so like I want to I love what I do. I've been doing it for a long time and I still love it because I'm very particular about who I work with. I want to continue being happy. I want to continue enjoying this because it helps me, it helps my family, it helps the clients that I'm working with. Like there's all these reasons, a million reasons why that is so important. And yes, elephant in the room. If you're just starting out, it is a lot harder to be that particular, right? But if you make your personality very clear and known in the way that you present yourself online to potential clients, you're a lot more likely to attract other people that resonate with that. So you can kind of get a bit of a head start if you just are clear about that rather than trying to like force the vagueness and force the people pleaser. I can do whatever you need me to do, everybody. Like that is going to attract a way bigger variety of personalities, and usually a lot of them are not going to be really in line with who you get the most excited out of.
I never thought about these things in this way ever. So I realize that I have a lot of homework to do and kind of diving into that awareness more now that you've kind of ignited something. Okay, like how do I apply this? Dude, I really appreciate you sharing so much wisdom with me and with all of the soon-to-be viewers of this. I'm like, this whole episode.
I'm just thankful that you allowed me to rant about these things that I sometimes, for a long time, felt like I was the only person that cared about these things, because nobody else is talking about this stuff, or at least like they weren't when I started. And I'm glad that it's, resonating with people and making sense.
They on IG trying to get a like.